Okay.
Hi, Susan. I've been looking forward to sitting with you today, and I have a lot of questions to ask you about Christianity. But I wanted to start with, what actually is the Bible?
Sure. Hi, Megan. It's good to sit down with you today. That is honestly the best question that you could ask. And what is the book actually about? It can look like a giant, confusing library, right?
Yeah.
But once you see the map that I'm going to give you, it will all start to click.
Okay.
I'm going to start with using what we call the Protestant canon. They're different canons, but I'm going to use what we call the Protestant canon.
Okay.
And that is, it has 66 books that you'll find in the most standard Bibles today. And there's different types of versions of Bibles, such as the NIV and ESV. And you can find different types of Bibles through the Holy Bible app, and they're in different languages as well. So you can find one that is right for you. But it splits into two main parts. And there's the Old Testament, which is before Jesus, and there's the New Testament. But the way they are grouped is what is really cool. And we have the Old Testament to start with. It's not just in chronological order, and it's grouped by types as well. So the first group that we have is what we call the Pentateuch, which is basically the foundations of the Bible. And then we have the historical books as well. And then we have wisdom literature, which is Psalms and Proverbs, and Psalms are like songs. And then we have also the prophets. It's like a foundation and a history and a heart and a future for hope for all wrapped together in one. Then we come across the New Testament, and that's with Jesus and his life. Then we have in the New Testament the Gospels, which is about Jesus' life. We have the Acts, which is the early church, and the letters, how to live it out. And then we have Revelation, which is basically the finale. The reason this grouping matters is that it shows the Bible isn't just a rule book. It's a progressive revelation. The Old Testament sets the stage and asks the questions that only Jesus can answer in the New Testament. And it's like a long setup for a great aha moment in history. Does that grouping for you, Megan, make sense at all? Or does it feel like it's still a bit of a library where you can't really find what you want on the right shelf?
Wait, if it's not all in order of when it happened, how am I supposed to know the story? Doesn't that make it harder to follow the plot?
That's a good question, actually. Think it's sort of like a miniseries or a play with extra features. You have the main episodes, which is basically your history. Then you have the bonus features or behind the scenes, which is basically a prophet and the wisdom. And that all happened at the same time as the episodes to give you an emotional depth. It's not just about what happened, but why it happened. It also has 3 acts as part of it. Okay, and to keep the story straight for you, I like to use the 3-act structure. Okay, this helps us see the purpose of everything. The first act is the creation and fall, which is basically the setup. You know, in your movie, you may as well say. And this is the beginning. This is where God creates a perfect world where humans can live in direct relationship with him. But then we rebel. We try to be our own gods. The purpose of the act is to show us the original design. We were made for beauty and connection, and why the world feels so broken today. In everyday life, how can I explain this to you? This explains why we have a deep longing for peace, but constantly face conflict in our jobs and our families.
Okay, so an opening scene in a movie creating a plot and including the demise of man and explaining why we need God.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that.
Okay.
And then you have your second act, which is basically like your middle part of your plays. All right, and this is known as redemption, which is conflict and climax. Okay? This is the longest act. It's God's rescue mission in the Old Testament. He picks one family in the Old Testament, Israel, to show the world who he is. They struggle like we do, then the climax will happen. And that's with Jesus. Jesus enters the story later to do what we couldn't do and lives his life perfectly and to take the hit of our rebellion. The purpose here is to show that God doesn't leave us in our mess. To put this into everyday life, so you can understand, this is about our identity. What we don't have to earn God's love. It's a gift already brought for us.
So it's the middle of the movie where trials and plot twists and how God will always be there for us.
Well, yes, kind of like that, but not exactly, and I'll explain more about that, very soon. Okay. Yep. And the third part of the third act is the restoration or the resolution. This is where we are now today, moving towards the end. Okay? It's God fixing everything. It's not just souls, but bodies, nature, and justice. The purpose is to give us hope and to put that into everyday life for you. This gives us a mission. We aren't just waiting for heaven. We are working with God now to bring a little bit of his kingdom to our neighbourhoods. How does that 3-act flow feel to you? Can you see where in your life and in our lives that fits into Act 3?
I get the Jesus part, but Act 2 seems so long and violent in the Old Testament. Why did God take so long to get to the point?
Yeah, I totally get that. It feels like a long detour. But think of it this way. God was cultivating the soil, okay? He had to show humanity through centuries of history that we couldn't save ourselves through laws or kings. He was building a need for Jesus so that when he arrives, we realise he was exactly who we were waiting for. Now, to tie it all together, there are 3 major themes within the Bible. To really tie this together, the 3 golden threads or themes that run from the first page to the last are, these ones. The first theme is the covenant, or the relationship and faithfulness. In the Old Testament, God makes covenants, which are binding promises with people like Abraham and David. It's God saying, I will be your God and you will be my people. In the New Testament, Jesus establishes what we call the new covenant. The significance in that, while humans always break their promises, God never does. So the significance of the first theme, which is the covenant, is that it tells us our relationship with God is based on his faithfulness and not our performance. Then we have our second theme, which is redemption, which is also known as deliverance and sacrifice. The Old Testament gives a more bigger picture of redemption, and this can be found in Exodus. God is rescuing his people from slavery in Egypt in the New Testament, and Jesus performs the greater Exodus by rescuing us from the slavery of sin and death through his sacrifice. Now, the significance of this in theme 2, which is redemption, it shows God as a rescuer. He doesn't just give advice. He has stages and basically is a jailbreak for our hearts. And then we have the third theme, which is the presence of God. In the beginning, God walks with man. In the middle, he dwells in a tabernacle or a temple. In the New Testament, he becomes a human known as Jesus. And now, in our times, through the Holy Spirit, he lives in us. The Bible is the story of God moving closer and closer to us until there is no distance left. So, Megan, with knowing all this, out of those three themes, covenant, redemption, or presence, which one feels most needed in your life right now?
The covenant one sounds good, but what happens when I mess up? Does the new covenant break like the old one did?
That's a good question. But the best part about the old covenant is that the old covenants relied on people keeping the end of the bargain. But in the new covenant, Jesus kept our end of the bargain for us. It's an unbreakable promise because it's held together by Jesus's perfection, not ours. You can't break it because you didn't make it. He did. So that's basically a briefer version of those 66 books in the Bible. So does that help clear up the big picture for you? It's a lot to take in, but it's all about, God, and how God refuses to give up on us.
That's awesome.
So it clears an understanding for you?
Yes, that's great.
Good. No worries. Thank you very much for your time and coming in. It's been awesome to sit down with you for this brief
Thank you.
moment to go through what the Bible is.
Thank you, that's awesome.
Thank you so much.